Hi, all. Thank you for coming to our webinar here at View. We will be talking to Susan Hoffer today, who is joining us from Lake Placid, New York. And as we go about this webinar, we will start at Susan's website, and then we will join Travis Kiefer in the gallery, who is our marketing and videographer, and he'll be taking us around the gallery as Susan talks about her work. Susan, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself before we go back to your website, that'd be great.
So hello, everyone. My name is Susan, and I'm a painter. And I began this body of work that I'm showing at the gallery in about 2016. So I've been at it for quite a few years. I started painting the series as a way to get to know my neighbors when we moved to the Adirondack Park full time. My husband and I were in the Albany area prior. So when we bought our house in 2002, and we moved up permanently in 2009. So it's really been great to do the work and to meet people and to listen to people and just feel a part of the community that I was living in. And that's how it started.
Great, thank you for that, Susan. I think we'll move on to your website, where there's a process drawing and then a painting of a self-portrait of you. And I was just wondering if you could go into a bit about the details and how you come up with these very complex and busy compositions. How do you decide on that composition when starting the process drawing? And let me just share my screen now. There we go. And just let me know if you'd like me to scroll down.
Okay. So maybe scroll a little bit so we could see the whole, there you go. So this is an example of, how I develop a painting. I use multiple drawings and I overlay parts of, the drawings on top of each other. So this is a view in my studio. And if you scroll down, you can see that in this image, I didn't have myself in in that space, and I added that space. That image. I added a few other things as well. So my husband um, clicked the camera. I set the whole thing up, and I ran into this space, and I said, please just, click. And then I just combined all of it into into the painting that's below. So that's kind of like how I work. I added other things as I paint, as I remember what I was trying to achieve in the painting. So the title of this is A New Blank Tablet, and this I did in 2020 as a response to President Biden being elected, and just feeling a sense of beginning again. And so that's pretty much how I work. And then underneath this painting, you can see the sorts of details that I achieve. I work with paint that I freeze and dry, and it gets real thick and kind of lumpy. And I really like to paint with thick, lumpy paint. I want to draw attention to the painting surface, and I want the paint to express the imperfections of being human, and the struggles that we all experience. So what's hard when I'm working with, for me, when I'm working with thick, lumpy paint, is the details are they're difficult to render, especially edges. The paint isn't fluid, and so I have to be very economical in what I'm doing, in the details. So I'm thinking more in terms of extracting some details, and thinking and considering more about structural relationships, and in a simplistic kind of way. The overall effect, is more of illusion. The eye is kind of tricked into thinking there's more there than there actually is through that process. And then also too, people, because I'm using photographic references, sometimes I hear, well, is it a photograph? Is it a painting? People aren't quite sure what it is. And it's all part of the intrigue, I feel.
That's great. I wanted to move on to into the gallery. The next painting that is in the gallery has a preliminary drawing as well. And I noticed that it's changed a bit from where the preliminary started the process into the actual painting. What made you add a figure and reconstruct that composition?
So this painting on the right is a painting about a friend. His name is Jeff. And when I asked him if he would pose for me, he's a thoughtful man. He didn't right away say, "Oh yeah, absolutely." We talked a little bit about it, and he agreed to let me come into his home and start to take photographs. So I took maybe 15 or 20 photographs. And so the drawing that's on the left is just a drawing of one of the photographs. I actually thought that I was going to, start with something like this. But then as we talked more and more about, his story, which is the title of the painting, I decided to show in the painting, sort of merge a couple of the different photographs, to show that, well, what he was expressing was that in order to live in the Adirondack Park, he found that he really needed to do lots of different things. He was, he just couldn't find a job. He was an environmentalist and he couldn't find a job in that area, of his degree. Living in the Adirondack Park was very important to him. So he just, he opened a business. He has had a couple of businesses. He worked in environmental issues as they became available, as things came up. And he loves living in the Adirondack Park because of just the opportunities to ski and hike and boat, and just being in the woods. So he doesn't necessarily think of himself as, like a citizen of Lake Placid. It's more like a citizen of, the Adirondack Park, of a rural area, and a citizen of the world, So, and that was, his story. And he told me once that he had a conversation with his father about why did he choose to live in the Adirondack Park. And he said, well, Dad, it's not what I do that makes me happy. It's where I live. And so I thought that was really special.
Yeah, that really stuck with me when you told me about that. Uh, yeah, I've noticed you have such an array of different people you're interviewing. The next one I would like to move on to is kind of the centerpiece as you walk in.
Yeah.
Descendants of the diaspora, Ashkenazi and Lebanese, Tupper Lake, New York.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about the subject matter and about that particular family and how you found them to paint their portrait.
So sometimes, I'm reading the newspapers or I'm listening to the news or something. I do a lot of podcasts in my studio when I'm painting. And I listened to a series of podcasts about, people coming to the United States from countries that maybe there was crime or war or famine or persecution, and that I was realizing that we have had many diasporas, in this country. And, my great grandparents came during famine, and I was realizing how we sometimes, forget that this country was built on our differences, and we gave relief to peoples who were in suffering. And so these two women, Sarah is on the right and Cami is next to Sarah again on the left, another Sarah, right? Their great grandparents came from both Russia and, well, their great grandmother came from Russia and their great grandfather came from Lebanon during the 1917, the pandemic. And I just, I work with Sarah and Cami at school and at the college that I teach. And I just became acquainted with their story, and I thought, look at what they've done. They both, you know, have contributed so much to the society, the culture of upstate New York. They're educators, and they're with their daughters. And why wouldn't we really want to welcome all people? Why do we decide, for others, whether they could be great citizens, and not to sell people short. And also too, I was really interested in the diversity in our rural area. A lot of times people from urban areas, I've lived in both, you hear a lot about people in rural areas as not being as welcoming
Mm.
as urban areas sometimes. So I thought this painting was important to draw attention, you know.
Yes, I agree. I love that it's in the center and it's really striking piece as you walk into the gallery.
Yeah.
So this subject matter obviously is a stream throughout a lot of the paintings. The next one is the moment you understand white privilege and decide to act for the greater good. I just
Yep.
want to speak a bit about where that's being reflected in the painting and how you decide to pick that subject matter with him in the painting.
Well, this is my husband, Bruce, and this was during COVID, during the first couple of months of COVID, when everything was shutting down. And, we were listening to the news, of course, and hearing that many of our neighbors, the children, um, uh, we live in a community. I know not all of Lake Placid is like this, but a lot of children rely on school lunch and the boxes of snacks that are often sent home on the weekends, and people were really struggling. And there were in our community, in the J News, people were asking for donations at the food pantry, and it just hit at like a crisis point in our community. And my husband was making breakfast for us. He was making a smoothie for each of us, and we were just talking about how fortunate we are that we had food. And then we were thinking, like, what could we do to help others? So we started bringing food to the food pantry and making donations locally and wherever there seemed to be a need that we could alleviate or help. And so I put in the painting, I always put symbolism. Like, I tried to include the Buddha on the right to show that he was really lost in sort of thought. It was like an awakening. I used the white light to show enlightenment, and also to fracture the space and create my own composition. But, this was a very meaningful, thoughtful time for us. We were grateful to be home because we're so busy at our jobs. And there were things we didn't notice about our community when we were so busy, and that we were noticing now. So that's how this painting came about.
Wow, yeah, and it's interesting that you have your own introspective as well as looking out on other people's life and what they were going through during the pandemic. I didn't realize that was your husband at first, so that's
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah. And we were even wearing masks around each other at that point. It was at a time when, we were just frightened. We didn't know um, much. Yeah.
The next title actually has the word fear in it, and I love the title. An independent woman is nothing to fear. And I love in this painting, you have such an intimate moment captured. It's almost as if the onlooker isn't present, but you somehow are capturing it.
Yeah. So this is my friend Leslie and my friend Charles. And Leslie, honestly, if she's 4'5" in her stocking feet, that's tall. She's a tiny lady and with a big, big personality. And I just have always admired Leslie. She's a businesswoman, and she's very kind as well. And Charles is her husband. He's a wonderful man. He's, traveled all over the world before meeting Leslie, and he's taught in Iran. And anyway, I just was listening again or reading about how women were running for office in Congress. And it was the first time so many women were getting involved in that sort of thing. And I just thought that a lot of people are intimidated by women that are strong, you know and I remember Charles would say, well, I'm not afraid of an independent woman. And I thought, no, you're not, Charles. And I'm also that independent woman. And my husband, we were with them, and he's, would say, nor am I, you know. Um, so I just thought it was something to think about, you know.
And in this painting, you have a really sculptural feel to the fabric and into those flowers, which is incredible to capture. And is that done by having that stiffened frozen paint? Is that mainly how you capture that?
Yes, the economical details. And I thought in this painting, I wanted to show the three-dimensional quality of Leslie's figure. I was thinking about Greek sculpture, you know, um, and so I love art history. And I was thinking of also the Greek vase of Ajax and Achilles, where they were throwing dice, and we knew um, that Achilles was going to win because his head was higher. And I wanted to show that Leslie was strong, and because of her position where she was higher. Charles is taller than Leslie, of course, much taller. And so, but you wouldn't know it
Hmm.
in the painting.
Yeah, that you do that sculptural feel so well. Another thing that I've noticed throughout your paintings that you can capture just immediately, you walk up and see it, is the light within the paintings. And I
Yes.
was thinking particularly of connecting to the protest and also Persuadable of the Cambridge Analytics. Both of those have a beautiful sense of light that you're grasping it in such a real way. How do you study light? Like, how much does that come into your practice?
Well, I I think about and observe light a lot. It's something that I'm aware of, and I notice how um, light can change a color or a value, and it can illuminate a space and make what we often ignore, into something sort of very beautiful. Light is a metaphor for enlightenment, so it has a function, but it's also has a beautiful concept, right? The light and the darkness. I think we need both, to be fully realized. And so I want people to stop, the busyness in their mind, and to be present to this person that is sharing their story. So I use the light to show that something special is going on, and also it's just fun to paint light.
Yeah,
you
I
know
do. I do love the fun little feature of the cat in the corner.
that's our cat Smudge. The figure is my husband. He was working at his computer, and Smudge was always glommed onto him. And here she's cleaning herself while she's bathing in the morning light. Yeah, she's the best.
You gotta always put a cat in one painting or another.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, for our next piece, I wanted to talk about Waiting for the Philosopher King. A lot of these pieces seem to be capturing people working from home or in a comfortable place. And I was wondering, going forward, as we move back to a somewhat new normal, do you think this will change your subject matter or the amount of intimacy you're having within the painting?
Oh, that's a really good question. As an artist, I'm always looking for change. I'm trying to reflect. I'm always interested in reflecting the temperature of what the culture is feeling, you know. So uh, I I think that since a lot of these paintings were painted when we were working from home, there is that sense of intimacy and solitude. But I think I'm actually even beginning to change what I'm doing, um, in terms of incorporating, um, today, 2022, in in my paintings. I've the last several paintings have moved from private spaces to public spaces, for example. And so, yeah, is that kind of
Yeah,
answer?
I just noted, like, for the next painting is your niece and nephew. So you're obviously working with people quite close to you, which is going to inform your work.
Yes.
So, and inform the topics you approach. So once you are not working with these people, or is it that you're just going to continue to work with your family and close friends?
Well, a lot of these paintings were done during the pandemic. So this painting, you know, um, so this is my niece and nephew. But since then, I painted my yoga teacher, uh, one of the doctors in the emergency room in Saranac Lake. So I am branching out. A photographer friend, I'm doing a painting about his experience in Saranac Lake. So yeah, I'm branching out, and but always interested in their stories because it's times have changed.
Yeah, and this story is particularly poignant right now. The title being "Watching the Healthcare Debate: No Pre-Existing Conditions Allowed," which affected your own family member. How do you manage to talk about so many different complex issues, and like, does that end up having a wear down on you, or do you have a lot of discussion with the people before painting?
So that's so I'm a real good listener. and I really enjoy people. And so when I have conversations with people, I go beyond, where did you go to school? What do you do? Sort of those things that we, you know, sort of do in our culture. And, you know, I think if you listen long enough, say, how are you? What's going on? Hey, I like that, that t-shirt that you're, with the writing on it. The people just open up, and and our job, right, would be to, as artists and or just decent human beings, is to give people a chance to tell what they're worried about, or and or not, or what they're happy about, or just their story. And this was my twin niece and nephew, and she really didn't have an injury to her eye. She um, had cancer, brain cancer, and she, her family was terrified. She's fine now. I mean, it's, but she wanted to make tell her story about being, afraid of not being able to have health insurance, if pre-existing condition was a thing. And she was only 18, but she understood that. Her parents didn't worry her, but she she was a smart girl. She knew that it was possibly going to not be a thing, and for her. So that's what this painting is about.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's interesting as well. When you go into the gallery, you can kind of just see these as portraits, and unless you're sitting there and reading the text, you might not get this bigger story from the labels or going on your website. Or, when people are joining us here tonight, they really get that more in-depth thought process and the emotions behind this piece, which
Yeah.
lucky to have you here for this talk. I do want to say before we move on to the next piece that we will be answering Q&As shortly. So if anyone has questions, just feel free to pop them in the chat now, and I'll get to them as we near the end. But I do want to talk about the pieces that are aside to the right to this, that have a correlating topic, which is the taking a knee for justice. And then also the piece, why can't I talk to white people about race anymore? And I was just wondering if you could speak about them both and their cross sections to each other.
Absolutely. So the maybe look at the drawing first. This is a process drawing. Why I can't talk about race. Yeah. This woman is Siobhan, and this was at the time Trayvon Martin was killed. And the news just, it's just, people are all, the students in our college are reading about it. And she obviously was upset. And I said to her, like, oh, Siobhan, would you talk about it? Would you explain what are your thoughts? I didn't guide her. I didn't ask a question and want her to answer it. I just said, talk to me, and, it was, she said, I can talk about race to white people, and I just, I thought it was just enough, you know, like we don't always listen, you know, and understand. So, and I never did a painting. This was a process drawing. I never did the painting for this. It was just too hard for me. I just didn't know, how could I paint this? Um, you know, I'd like to go back and do it. Um, she, it reminded me of some of Kathy Kolowitz's drawings, the German expressionist, when she lost her son Peter. You know, she did a series of Pietà drawings. It's just sort of a guttural um, scream is what I was trying to capture and express. But then the painting on the left, well, that happened a few years later. And so the painting of Larry and Jan taking a knee, that was in response to Colin Kaepernick, you know, when he was taking a knee during um, the Star Spangled Banner, you know, at the football games, and he lost his job over it. He was a quarterback, and you know, people were taking sides about, it was disrespectful, no, it was respectful, you know, and it was just a big kind of argument between people. And Larry, this is a friend of mine, and this is Jan, his wife, said to me once, and it sort of ended the conversation for me. He said, well, I'll always take a knee for justice, but I'll never step foot in Alabama because my grandfather was lynched in Alabama. And so, you know, I just thought, you know, I didn't know anybody who grandfather was actually lynched, you know, and it just gave meaning to, you know, a lot of things that I didn't realize living in my skin color, you know, and I'm grateful to, you know, to be able to say to others, hey, did you know this? You know, too. I think that there's so much division in our society that if we could look at the humanity in the other and listen to what they feel deeply about, that we'll find that we have so much in common and that we really don't need to argue, you know. So I'm really working very hard in an artistic way to advocate for healing, you know, and through topics that divide.
Yeah, that is very evident in your work. It's very human when you're looking at this. As somebody had commented, you capture consciousness, which I believe to be very true. You're clearly thinking very in depth, but also taking other people's emotions into consideration. We did have a question talking about or asking about your artistic journey, and have you always painted, and have you painted in this style?
So so no, I wanted to be a ceramic artist, a production potter. And I did that for many years in college, and I still love pottery. But I found that for me, I needed to say more than I was able to say with my pottery, and that in painting. And I so I s- s- one of my professors said, "Well, why don't you try painting?" You know, and I switched to painting, and I do both. You know, I'm now and what I find in what I enjoy about the clay and the paint is they're very you know, fluid in my hands. You know, there's this sort of push and pull quality, you know, in both. The plastic quality of both.
Yeah. Do you think you'd ever combine painting and ceramic together?
Well, I'm always looking to change, right? What I'm doing, but I find that um, I certainly have to simplify my paintings even more. You know, I enjoy the form of a 3D object a lot. I don't want to kind of camouflage it with a complex painting. So that would be something to figure out, you know?
Yeah. Interesting. Or maybe more like a two-dimensional like tile work or something may work well for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would like to also just say if anyone does want to ask any more questions, this is definitely the time. Is there any paintings that we didn't get to that you'd like to talk about, Susan?
Um, oh, the painting of my father.
Is
The
that one
it's
shown?
in it's in the hall. It's an elderly man sitting on the couch.
Oh, yes, with great lighting coming down, casting over him and his long legs sticking out. Yes.
Yeah.
Travis, is it possible to see that one? Hopefully he can make it there. Uh, in the meantime, when we're waiting to see that one, you're now going to be looking towards working with more light now, aren't you? And how that cast throughout the painting.
Yes, and thanks to you, Kelsey. Uh, I I am I'm experimenting with intense color um, to create atmosphere in my paintings. So in it, usually I shine a light source on what I'm doing if the light isn't available from a window, you know. Um, so now I'm going to switch up the color in the light bulbs to yellows and blues and greens and reds and just play around a little bit with that. I'm super excited about, you know, changing it up. I think I've got 50 paintings like this. And so it's time to move on. It's a different time now. You know, 2022 is full of opportunity and hope and, you know, and so I want to reflect that in a different kind of hope, reflect that in my work. But yet people struggle. So I still want to tell stories, but
Just
you
in
know,
a different way now.
in a different way.
Yeah, well, as you said, artists are always changing. We're always finding new ways to work, and I can't wait to see that progression.
Thanks.
When are you going to be starting these new processes soon then?
Yes, I've already started one. I've been experimenting with blue light, and then I'm experimenting with green light on a figure. So, but they're very different than what I'm presenting here. So I'm starting a series of what I'm calling experiments. So I don't know if they're how they're going to be, but I know that experiments take a while to figure out if you want to save parts of it or scrap it completely. But I'm open.
Oh, well, if you'd like to talk about this current painting, we now have your dad on the up here.
Perfect. All right. So this is my father. Mm, can you see it? Or
Uh, yep, I believe so.
yeah. Oh, perfect. So it's really not this yellow, but it's what the light is white. And this is my father. And um, so this painting, I mean, I took a series of photographs of him. This happened very spontaneously as because he was sitting under a skylight and it just seemed to dissolve parts of his body. And he he said to me when I sat down on the floor under him, like I would often do when I was, it's like a small child, he's looking up at this guy you thought was big and tall and whatever. And he just said, what are you doing? You know, and he started gesticulating with his hands. I said, I just want to photograph you, Dad. You look really beautiful with this light coming down. And I didn't know it at the time, but a week later he died.
Oh, wow.
So this is my favorite. And he was old. He was 93, and but this is my favorite painting because it really captures a moment where he and I were just together. And he was an engineer, an electrical engineer, and he was always interested in electronics. And so he's got my phone in his pocket, you know. He's like always trying to figure and solve electrical problems or mechanical problems. So that's my favorite painting in the show.
Someone did ask another question that you can see in this photo. They asked, can you talk about how you create the brightest spots in your paintings? Is it just white or are they several variations of white to create that brightness? And obviously in this portrait, you're really illuminating him with that spot center. So how are you doing that as a technique?
So this I'm answering as a painter. So I mix titanium white and zinc white. And so that's a warm and a cool white. Titanium is very fluid, zinc is very stiff in pigment. And then so I just use, that's the only color that's kind of not mixed. Everything else, all the other colors are my own colors, they're completely mixed. And then so yeah, it's kind of almost straight from the tube. Most of the other colors have 3 or 4 or more colors all mixed, hues all mixed. But it's just got the 2, and I freeze the white so it comes out stiff. So it becomes like a, focal point.
Yeah, it really does in this photo. He's illuminated, it's just sitting there basking in the glow. It's very beautiful.
Yeah. So, and that's pretty much, you know, my favorite. I do have another favorite, actually, but it's not as much a favorite, is the painting of Debbie with the turtle. And that's in the gallery. It was next to the painting of my twin
Yeah.
in
Uh,
there.
Travis can probably go and look at that one. While he goes to go video that one, I just wanted to say that alongside this virtual gallery talk, in the next coming week, we are doing a series of updating your professional practice. Next week will be promotion and gallery connections and how you do that, how you start to do that. So it's for all experience levels. We'll be doing ones on hanging and installation and framing. Because obviously we get works from people like your level, Susan, that, very well framed. You make your own structures. I installed the work myself and it was beautiful. But then we also get people that are starting off and they might not know how you actually do wire framing and things like that. So we'll be offering that series. You can go to our website and register, just as it's like a lecture webinar, just like this. So you're kind of our first part of our series we're doing in this series of shows. So you got to kick us off.
Yeah. I do see a question, Kelsey. Are hands in the Q&A, are hands difficult?
Yeah, feel free to answer that.
Yeah. And but yes, they are. They are difficult. Harry, you asked. Yeah, they are so difficult. I've been painting since I'm 16. I grew up on Long Island, and we had a very good art program. It was Bethpage High School, and we had 2 periods of painting and then a period of art history. After that, could you imagine, right? We had a 9-period day. You still had to take your academics if you wanted to be in this art program, but you didn't get any study halls. And you were there from 7:30 until 3:30, anyway, my point is, I learned to paint hands in high school. Well, I kind of learned to paint hands in high school. I would always break out in a sweat, and have anxiety. Oh, a hand. Um, and it was a long process of learning how to paint hands. Now I don't even think about it. That was a really good question. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Hands are hard for me anyway.
Most definitely. I stay away from them.
And feet too.
Oh, yeah.
All those, intricate details.
And you do have feet in a few of these paintings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Travis has pulled up the woman with her turtle.
Yeah. So this is Debbie, and she is she's a jack of all trades. She teaches yoga. She's a minister, and she rescues wildlife. Her specialty is turtles. So at this time of year, turtles are often walking across the road. They're leaving their nests. They're looking for water, and they're often hit by cars. And so when that happens, people will bring them to rescue centers, rescue too many R's places. And so Debbie converted her bus, an old school bus, into a place where she does rehab. And she's kind of like a doctor of turtles. So she's been trained to give them antibiotics and medication by different veterinarians, and she brings them back to health. She does turtles and critters and squirrels and just creatures that have been injured by human and also each other. So it's a big job. And she's very much interested in biodiversity. So I learned a lot from Debbie um, about the environment and biodiversity and how, plants and animals and people can live more harmoniously, especially in the Adirondacks, you know.
Yeah,
So,
that's wonderful. We have one more question before we close out, and it's about another technical painting question. Does the frozen paint remain a stiff consistency when it gets warm, or does it stay in the freezer? Does it need to stay in the freezer?
no, oop, huh, are you there?
Yep, yeah, I'm here.
I can't see. No, so once the paint hardens on the canvas, it's hard, it stays with all of its lumps and its brushwork, and it takes a little longer than thin glazed layers, but no, it becomes rock hard.
Oh,
So, and I use very inexpensive paint. I use Dalla Rainey's Gagosian paint, which I can get a real big tube for $10. So I use a lot of paint, but I stay away from the expensive paint that stains. It has more of staining property. It's not as brilliant. So, the colors tend to be more basic, but it's great for painting, um, just local color, which I've been doing now for, a good 10 years.
oh, well, thank you for sharing that. I do want to say, if anyone hasn't been able to come and see Susan Hoffer's exhibition along with CADK and the CNY Watercolor Society, it is free for April and May to come and view the galleries. So we'd love to have you come see Susan's work. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Susan?
Not at all. You've just about covered it. Thank you, Kelsey, and thank you, Travis, and thank you, Catherine. You guys were amazing to work with and very encouraging and supportive. And I'm very grateful, and the experience is very memorable.
Oh, thank you,
Thanks
Susan.
for giving me a chance to focus on the people in the Adirondacks.
Yeah, incredible work. And I hope to meet lots of other people that come to visit your work. And, best of luck with your future work, Susan.
Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you.
Thank you for all tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye.